you want. Yeah, what you need. Want anything. Mm. Food pole. I have another fishing pole. Yeah.
Economy. He gave us horrible inflation, and I think the market was going to go very, very bad. If anything, I have a lot of very smart people, friends of mine, and great businessmen. They're now investing because of what I'm doing. Because long term, what I'm doing is making our country strong again, financially strong, militarily strong, and strong if we want to get away. Remember this: we have wars. When I left, we had no wars. We didn't have Ukraine and Russia. We didn't have October 7th. We didn't have that disaster that took place with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And you look at what's happened there. We caught the major terrorist, which Biden would have caught. Why didn't he catch him? I caught him 5 weeks into the presidency. I caught the man responsible for Abigail. And he's going to pay hell right now. He's a bad dude. He's a bad guy. But we didn't have these problems. I had no inflation. I had a great economy. He gave you high prices. You couldn't buy bacon. You couldn't buy anything. And also, I inherited a situation with eggs. The price of eggs was through the roof. Well, now the price of eggs has come down a lot.
Motherfuckers deal with
Interest rates
eggs.
have come down. Gasoline prices have come down. It's all coming down. It's all a beautiful
None of that
thing.
shit's true.
You can do it the right way, the wrong way. We're doing it the right way. And I have tremendous.
Is there nothing but trash in this motherfucker?
This country,
Oh.
tremendous, much more so than if I sat back for 4 years and had a good time in the Oval Office. I want to look at cars.
I want to say, as a function of the great policies of President Trump and his administration, and as an act of faith in America, Tesla is going to double vehicle output in the United States within the next 2 years. double.
Big deal.
What
By
was
the way,
what did he
here's
just
one
announce?
car. This one I don't understand. This one I don't want, but that's okay. Without a steering wheel, it comes out next year, right?
Yes.
Explain that, please.
Yes, well, the Cybercab starts production
Double
in
Tesla
Texas,
production.
Next year.
Okay.
And it's self-driving.
their orders
We have
right
so much confidence in the
Self-driving?
nature of it that it'll actually
Self-drive!
not have a
We're gonna get
steering wheel,
self-driving
will not have
finally!
pedals. It'll either self-drive or not drive at all, but it'll self-drive.
Yes!
I'm
One
not
more
gonna
year
pass
away!
on that particular.
Before this event today, when's the last time you bought a new car?
Well, I buy a lot through my children because they run the company now. I used to buy a lot. I haven't bought a new car in a long time.
What was your first car?
The only thing I know is the Beast. I got a big car with very thick windows and thick side panels.
Is that going electric?
we buy a lot of cars. Actually, I bought this one for Kai.
Do you remember your first car?
The Ontario Premier calling you and giving you his decision about the electricity surcharge.
Are these
Will you make a
speed for 21 seconds?
Well, now I'm looking at that, but probably so.
you're
He
looking
was
at
a
it?
gentleman.
Will you reduce it back?
He was a gentleman. Look, I said it before. We give Canada $200 billion a year. We subsidize Canada between all of the things we give them and trade. We give them. We don't have to have cars made in Canada. We don't have to have lumber from Canada. We have.
Yeah, I'm fishing a lot of coal out of this bitch.
All I have to do is freeze them. Some of the restrictions that we're putting. I can do that with an executive order. We don't need energy. We have more energy than anybody.
Now that there are no laws in America, how would you best go about completely selling out? I don't want to work anymore. I don't know, bro. I'm gonna try to skip my tax payment this year. We'll see what happens.
else in the world. So we spend $200
I'll keep you
billion
updated.
a year subsidizing Canada. We don't have to do that. And frankly, the way that gets solved is Canada should honestly become our 51st state. We wouldn't have a northern border problem. We wouldn't have a tariff problem.
Newspaper. What is this?
They spend very little, as you know, the least of almost anybody on military. And we spend the most of anybody on military. We have a great military. I rebuilt the military during my first time. We're going to have to rebuild it a little bit again. Not that much.
How many times do you have to keep
rebuild it
rebuilding?
a little bit again.
Okay.
But Canada would be great as our cherished 51st state. You wouldn't have to worry about borders. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And by the way, Canada is very highly taxed, and we're very low tax. We're considered a low tax nation because of me, because I cut the taxes so low. So the people of Canada would pay much less tax.
But just to be
It
clear,
makes
with
a lot of sense. And by the way, when you take away that artificial line that looks like it was done with a ruler, and that's what it was. Some guy sat there years ago and they said, brah. Well, when you take away that,
Brah.
that beautiful formation,
Wait, what?
Canada and the United States, there is no place anywhere in the world that looks like that. It's
He absolutely got this talking point from Putin. I don't believe this came from anybody in the U.S. That the borders between Canada and the U.S. are unnatural. That must have come from Putin somehow. Who in the U.S. has ever...
Plus Greenland.
And then if you add Greenland, that's even. That's pretty
It's
good.
gonna look beautiful.
Okay? I'm going to look at this. I'm going to make a decision. Do you want to hear what my decision is?
Let's hear it.
Okay. What's your best of these cars? What do you think?
Well, the car that I drive is the Model S flat.
Which is that one?
The red one in the
I
middle.
like that. Yeah.
God, this is so fucking cringe, dude.
Jeff, they're going to be using it. I'm not allowed to use it. That's the fast one.
Just to be clear, sir, the 50%, is that going to go into effect on Canada or not?
Which one?
The 50% tariffs? Will you...
I'll let you know about it.
Okay.
I'll let you know, dog.
Have you ever sat behind the steering wheel one of these? Yeah.
I'm not buying that or anything.
I can check it.
Let me get into this. Oh, what's Secret Service?
I mean, if you actually drove it around,
no idea what the fuck this is doing. Constant combinator. Signals. Output.
Did you start it?
5K, 5K. Oh, this is what it's outputting.
I saw Biden do a test loop here once in the Jeep.
Oh my god. Is he gonna drive? He's like, wait, how do you go forward again? Oh. He just wanted to check out the sick display? Is that... Oh yeah, wait, why don't I just connect this right to the tank? I'm sure there was a reason why.
Alright, I got some new Adidas to sleep
Wait,
on.
did you do circuit conditions on these before without other machines, or is this new?
We've got a lot of cameras up. We already know who some of them are. We're going to catch them. And they're bad guys. They're the same guys that screw around with our schools and universities. The same garbage. Now we're going to catch them. And let me tell you, if you do it to Tesla, if you do it to any company, we're going to catch you and you're going to
That's not new.
hell.
What did I use? I feel like I had logic networks for these before. I don't remember why.
Well, I have a round table.
Sure was a good reason.
It's much more important because I want to buy one of these. My whole staff, they're going to safely use them. And they can't believe it. So, Margot, wherever you are,
Josh,
she's going to use it. They're all going to be using it.
what do you want?
We're going to have a good time using it. And if I can, oh, there you are, Margo. Look at Margo's right there. What are you, a member of the press? She's become a member of the press. Takes great pictures. What do you think of it, Margo? Do you like the idea? Very happy.
Mr. President, your comments the other day not ruling out a potential recession.
Man, I sure do like this.
Our secretary said there wouldn't
Great broadcast. Good stream.
specifically on the recession.
Yeah.
Do you
I think
think
this
there will be a
country-
recession?
I don't see it at all. I think this country's going to boom. But as I said, I can do it the easy way or the hard way. The hard way to do it is exactly what I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater.
20 times greater. Our GDP is going to multiply by 20.
And what do you say to
You
Americans?
look at what I've said over the last 10 years. Trump has been right all the time. This is the way to do it. We're going to make America great again. You know, to make it great, you have to have jobs, you have to have factories, you have
Yeah.
to have. I look at.
We had no
some of
jobs
the
and no
things that
factories before Trump
his
came
last
into office.
administration, He was the worst president in the history of our country.
The worst.
Nothing was happening. Nothing. He had no idea what was going on. Our country went to hell. And then to allow millions of people to come in that are prisoners and mental
asylums.
all of the things, gang
Haitians.
members, drug lords.
Did you say Haitians?
Well,
He
we're
didn't say that.
searching
But...
them all down now, trying to get them out of our country, and we're going to do that. But on the financial end and the economic end, what we're doing is, to me, it's the most exciting. Our country will be greater than ever before, and it won't take too long.
And
So
what's your
seeing the
message to
markets go
Americans
down
right
is-
now, sir, who are worried about the stock market? What's your message to them as they watch it?
Let's go see this up. I did buy one of these.
Oh, bulletproof.
Look,
I mean, look.
of imagination. I think I have a great imagination. Who else but this guy would design this, and everybody on the road is looking at it. It's amazing, actually. As soon as I saw it, I said, "That is the coolest design." It's. Do you agree with that, Brian? I do. It's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
You gotta
Oh my
give him
God.
credit.
We want the future to look like the future, and it's kind of what kind of truck would Blade Runner drive? That was the design idea.
It's really amazing.
What kind of car would Blade Runner drive? I don't know. What would Blade Runner do, guys?
Yeah. Let's see if there's
We should.
Johnny Blade.
Your thoughts on the market?
well, we got the cyber cab coming out next year.
The cyber cab.
Are you gonna buy one of those? We'll pass. We're too old for that shit.
So, Mr. President, when you look at the market selling off, that didn't concern you?
Nope. Doesn't
Nope.
concern me.
Didn't give a fuck.
I think some people are gonna make great deals by buying stocks and bonds. And
Yeah, did you even stop and think about the deals?
I think we're gonna have.
You say some people are going to make great deals buying stocks. True. Stocks on sale, full discount.
It's a real economy, not a fake economy. It's a fake economy. They were putting in all government jobs. You see what happened last week, last month? We had more real jobs, and government jobs are way down. That's going to continue. Those are real jobs.
Real
Those
jobs.
are jobs that keep the country going. You can't have all government jobs. You have no income to pay the workers.
True.
And a lot of those workers didn't show up to work. That was the other
They didn't even
thing.
work.
And President Trump, there's this protest leader from Columbia University that the administration is moving to deport. He said that his arrest is going to be the first.
You guys are so obsessed with the deportation
I
stuff.
think we ought to get them all out of the country. Get troublemakers.
Get all of them out.
agitators.
True.
They don't love our country. We ought to get him the hell out. I think that guy, we ought to get him. I heard his statements too. They were plenty bad. And I think we ought to get him
They
the
were
hell out of the
plenty
country.
bad.
I watched them. I watched tapes specifically. I watched tapes. And you can have them. Okay? You can have them. And you can have the rest of them. Let them go to school. Let them learn. Columbia used to be a good school.
Used to be.
Now it's been overrun because of bad leadership.
By the
That's what
wokies.
happens to countries, and it happens to universities, and it happens to companies. And I don't want it to happen to a guy that did nothing wrong. He did everything right because he did a great company. But what he did by coming into government to help government from years of abuse, from decades of abuse, and you see that when you look at Social Security, where you have 200-year-old people on the rolls of Social. That's just.
I love how we just like tell these the same fucking lies, lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, over and over and over and over and over again.
Large fraud. I think it's that, but I think it's also. I'm just telling people, this man is a great patriot, and you should cherish him.
And keep buying his cars.
You should cherish him. You know, I have a little statement. We have to take care of our high IQ people because we don't have too many of them. And we got to take care of them.
And as you guys look at the Social Security Administration and you guys are looking for fraud and waste and abuse, can you guarantee people who are concerned about an interruption to benefits that there will not be?
Yes, we're going to be very careful with any interruption to benefits.
Yeah, very careful.
In fact,
Like over with
not only
Ebola.
by tackling the waste and fraud in entitlements like Social Security, Medicare, can we actually preserve those programs for the future? Because with unchecked fraud and waste, we won't be able to afford them. The president's very dedicated to solving the budget deficit, which if we don't solve the budget deficit, we're going to go bankrupt as a country.
True.
As a country, there's no Social Security, there's no Medicare, there's no nothing. To sort of echo what the president was saying, what really matters is moving people from jobs that are relatively low productivity in government to high productivity in the private sector, increasing the true output of products and services. That's the real economy. That's what actually enables Americans to have a higher standard of living.
Oh, okay.
That's what's happening, and that's I think you'll see the truth of that in the months to come.
And we're going to make it really much stronger by taking people that don't exist or taking people that shouldn't be there out, by taking illegal aliens that are on
Nobody
Social Security
exists.
or
Oh,
Medicare.
all
I
those
don't
illegal aliens
exist.
on Social Security and
We're taking
Medicare.
them
Yeah.
out. We're making it much stronger. The country will be much stronger, but it's going to really be stronger economically. And when you look at what we're doing, I've been called by so many companies. Like yesterday,
Can't tell you're doing shit right now.
biggest tech companies in the world.
Sounds like
And all they're talking about.
I sound like
they
Asmund
get
Goldschrew.
was there. We had a lot of them. Michael Dell was there. We had a lot of great companies, Hewlett Packard, and all they're talking about is investing in this country. They want to be sure. Don't forget, they're looking down the road 10 years and 15 years. They want to make sure we have a strong country. They're all coming in. As you know, Apple, Tim Cook, he said that he's going to invest $500 billion.
billion.
United States. He
That's
never
with a
did that
B.
before. He invested in China. He's got his plants in China.
Apple has never invested in the United States before.
And we build them in the United States. And if I I didn't have victory in that election, you wouldn't be doing it.
Nope.
And if I didn't say what I'm saying, and I'm being very honest, and it's much more difficult than just sitting around and having a great time. It's a very glamorous position if you want to do that. We could have kept it, but eventually bad things would have happened. This way, good things. I'm very optimistic about the country. I think we're going to have the greatest markets we've ever had, and it's going to be really fueled by what we're doing. You had to see these companies yesterday. They're investing billions and trillions.
Trillions now. Trillions now. They just got higher.
10 cents.
Mr. President, when you talk to Vladimir Putin about this ceasefire deal, do you think you need to have a conversation with him to
Yeah,
get the Russians
I'll
to
talk
agree?
to Vladimir Putin. Yeah.
When will
I
you
want to
talk
get.
to
Look, that's the other.
What a lying piece
It's
of shit.
2025 and NPCs are still for Fauci mandates. If you're still afraid of a cold, even though everyone else moved on, you're more senile than POTUS 46. Bro, are you okay? No one is talking about this. Also, I'm anti-vax and anti-mask mandates now. I'm all in favor, okay? It's time for social Darwinism. Let's go.
It takes two to tango, as they say, right? So hopefully he'll also agree, and I really think that would be 75% of the way. The rest is getting it documented and, negotiating land positions, etc.
So you'll talk to him this week?
I think so, yeah.
So
And
you have,
when do
you
you
have a
anticipate meeting
ceasefire
him in
in
person?
place on the Ukrainian side. How close do you think then you are to a total ceasefire? with
I hope it'll be over the
I
next
hope we're
2
close.
days. I'd like to see. I know we have a big meeting with Russia tomorrow.
Me too, dog. Me
And
too.
some great conversations hopefully will ensue. The people have done a great job. Marco Rubio's been great.
Social Darwinism, a term you picked up from the book? No, actually, but it's funny that it got brought up again in that book because the time I'd heard social Darwinism spoken about was when we were debating neo-Nazis. So it's funny that it comes up again in a book about the actual Nazis.
Steve Witkoff's been great. Michael Waltz. They've all, every one of them, they've really stepped up. They are into it. They want to see two things.
What do they want
By
to see?
far, number one is death.
Yes.
Of people that aren't citizens of our country, but they're people, just like you. They're people.
They're people just like us.
We also don't want to give billions and hundreds of billions.
Are
of
they, though?
We're in
Are
there for
Eastern Europeans actually
$350
people?
billion.
I don't even know if they agree with that in Europe yet.
And there was no reason this war would have never happened if I was president. So it's a very sad thing. Thank you all very much. I love Tesla.
Which one did you buy?
What did he? Tesla.
And how does this work?
And I want that same color.
Are you going to put down a credit card? Elon, would you take a personal
I'm gonna
check
give
from
him
the
a check.
president?
I do it the old I give checks. I like checks.
I think his credit's good.
Do you still have access?
I like a check better than this modern system of all of a sudden there's money in your account, nobody knows. I like signing a check. Sort of.
God, he's so fucking just. How does he consistently give the wrong take on everything? Am I just a hater? That's a sign of being a hater. When you think every single thing somebody says is fucking retarded, that's a sign of being a deranged hater. I prefer checks over credit cards. Really?
But we're gonna pay, and I don't want a discount. You would give me a discount. But if I do a discount, they're gonna say, "Oh, I got benefits." I don't want any discount.
What about a vanity plate?
Yeah, let's see. Truth.
All right, there it is.
Does he even know what a vanity plate is? Has he ever paid for plates in his entire life?
He downloads his playlist. That one got you by surprise.
Playlist gets downloaded as well. You can pump your music.
You can do it.
Pump your music, bro.
You can do anything.
Mr. President, you buying a Tesla will
Oh,
boost
no.
Tesla sales and
The dreaded accidental selfie cam. Oh, never mind. That was intentional. Go Trump.
When somebody's a great patriot, they shouldn't be hurt. He's a great patriot. He didn't know me from Adam until we met a little bit when I was in my first term, but he came out, he endorsed me very strongly, and I admired that and respect.
Okay. Wait, what is this real quick? This is a true 100% real video. Fact checked by an American patriot, but I don't know what it is. Sorry, I can't change the volume on my Twitter. Is this gonna be not safe for work? Wait, I don't even know if I can watch the stream. Hold on. Never mind. I don't trust it. Too risky. Wait, someone said linkers. Here you go. I'm not posting this in YouTube chat. I don't know if there's like not safe for work for it, and I posted in YouTube chat. I don't know if my account gets banned. He likes checks because he can bounce those and not pay. Hasn't there been like electronic instant check, whatever, like, hasn't that been a thing for like 30 years? I feel like when I was a teenager, if you would write a check somewhere, they like scan it and it gets like instantly done anyway, no? Like the idea of you write a check and it takes like 2 days to hit your account. I feel like that hasn't been the case for like 3 decades, but I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure. I think I've only written like 2 checks in my entire life.
About all this landslide stuff. It was a significant victory. It was a decisive victory. All that swing state stuff matters, right? The county movement stuff matters. But let's keep it in perspective. It was the 44th narrow victory. The professional Trump apologist class with the median Trump voter, right? The voters that gave Trump a narrow victory, and I keep hearing about all this landslide stuff. It was a significant victory. It was a decisive victory. All that swing state stuff matters, right? The county movement stuff matters. But let's keep it in perspective. It was the 44th biggest electoral college win in American history.
Right.
And he won the popular vote by what, 1.5, 2 million votes or something like that? So in the history of American politics, it's a pretty narrow win. The people who made that majority, the Hispanic mechanic who felt, besieged by COVID.
Gosh.
Hispanic mechanic.
They're not paying attention to, they weren't paying a lot of attention when he was president the first time, and they're not paying a lot of attention to this stuff now. The idea that they all endorse everything that he's doing, you can get that impression by listening to the Fox News crowd. But if you actually just look at the polling, his pardoning, which I thought by itself was an impeachable act on his first day, his pardoning of the January 6 rioters is not popular. It's just not polling well.
I don't know how I feel about that statement. I have to think about it. I might come around and agree with that if I thought a lot about it. It would be kind of weird to impeach somebody just for exercising a super constitutionally granted political power. The problem really isn't the fact that he pardoned the J6 people. It's the fact that J6 happened at all, and then he was allowed to run again for election. That's the big problem. He should have never been allowed to run for another office. But we basically nuked the 14th Amendment because we didn't like how inconvenient it was to Trump. So,
and so in some ways, I mean, just as a matter of rank punditry, you can make the case that Trump is already repeating some of the mistakes that Biden made, which is thinking he's got a much bigger mandate than he does. I think the concept of a mandate is garbage to begin with, but thinking he has a much bigger mandate than he does, and that he has a mandate for these boutique, demagogic, authoritarian moves that the guys who are voting on egg prices and inflation and maybe the border weren't voting for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to run the FBI. They weren't voting.
True. I feel like people aren't talking enough about the injunction of the SAVE program and IDR for college. There is no communication on if those programs will have an extension renewed this year. I don't know what either of those programs are. So,
voting for purges in the Justice Department, and to think that he's got the endorsement of the people, even all of his voters, for all that stuff, I think is a political miscalculation. It doesn't get us out of the problem that he's president and nobody else is, but I just don't think that outside of his core base, the very online crowd and all of that, that he has got the kind of popular support that people want to, for either to support him or to criticize him or to catastrophize about him. I don't think he's got that level of support that he thinks he does, and that the people who are the most scared or the most happy about what he's doing think he does.
Since, oh wait, this is random. Can someone explain how undocumented immigrants pay taxes? I saw an article like they paid billions, but how? Genuine question. So there's two ways that illegal immigrants pay taxes. So one is the obvious way, in that they pay consumption taxes that you pay for at the point of sale, right? So if an immigrant goes to the store, buys something, they pay sales tax on it. The second kind of weirder roundabout way is oftentimes, if you're an illegal immigrant, you could get paid under the table. So somebody's giving you cash, right? In which case you get nothing is taxed for your income there. Or they'll buy stolen social security numbers. If you can give a stolen social security number to somebody when they're filling out your I-9, it is the I-9, right? I just filled out one of these for an employee recently. I keep forgetting the abbreviation. I think it's I-9. But if you fill one of these out with a stolen social security number, then what that means is that while the immigrant is working, while the undocumented immigrant is working, there are federal FICA taxes, so Social Security, Medicare taxes that are being withheld from
Yeah,
that
dog.
worker's wages that are going into Medicare and Social Security. However, they're not going to be able to recover that when it comes time to applying for Social Security, Medicare, because it's a fraudulent number, and if they have to show an ID or anything, they're going to be fucked unless they fake all that shit too. But
What do you make of the influence of people like Curtis Yarvin and other seemingly fringe, certainly idiosyncratic?
what would you say to people who argue illegal immigrant labor is the modern equivalent of slavery? I would say that's fucking retarded. Illegal immigrants that kill themselves to get to the United States to work, even illegally, are obviously making this choice a lot more than a slave was.
Figures on the tech bros and oligarchs who are now facilitating this second administration.
So it's funny. I kind of ignored Curtis Yarvin for years, and then I listened to the New York Times interview with him, and to say I was underwhelmed by his arguments is a wild exaggeration. Intellectually, I think there's very little there. Not that everything he says is wrong. I agree with some of his sort of subsidiary points. I just don't think they back up his major conclusions that we need a monarch. I think that's ridiculous. I think that, so I don't take him very seriously. I really don't. I wanted to. I look for intellectual interlocutors that I can really fight with, but I find his arguments so specious and sort of silly.
But what do you make of the fact that people like Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and all of these other people who are have been quite instrumental in building Trump 2.0. I mean, they arguably introduced J.D. Vance to Trump, and if Vance becomes the future of the party, well, then they certainly will largely own that, and they are really they're not even.
Have you checked out Curtis Yarvin? I feel like I've read one thing, but I don't know, it just seems retarded to me. I don't know. Maybe, we watched Joanna's video on it. Maybe we'll watch more in the future, but Destiny is spreading misinformation, saying they only get paid under the table or use stolen social security numbers. They get ITNs illegally under their name. Should be prosecuted. Okay, you're banned. What? Why not just say they can also do this? Why would you assume I'm spreading misinformation on something you could just Google? Rope thick as soon as possible.
Even hiding.
I don't know if you need to provide. Do you need an SSN to get an ITN? If you're, I don't remember how to apply for tax ID USA. Fuck, I'm not looking through this right now. But there has to be at some point where you verify an ID as an American citizen or something. Otherwise, every foreigner would just come to this country, get a tax ID, and then just work and never have any penalties or anything. No, it seems. But I don't know.
They're quite influenced by Yarvin and the people he reads, and some of the people he reads are actually Nazis.
Yeah. So as I was about to say, I don't take him seriously. I take it very seriously that important people take him seriously.
Yeah.
That is very disturbing to me. The red pilling of the sort of tech bros has been sociologically fascinating and I think really problematic. I have a theory, I got it from a friend of mine, that Peter Thiel, I used to admire a lot of Peter Thiel stuff. I like the seasteading, techno-libertarian stuff. Let's get jetpacks, all that kind of thing. And I think that
there's a huge problem. I mean, I've said this for so long with Jordan Peterson and the like, with people just overestimating their competency in one realm, or rather they're very competent in one realm, so then they overestimate their competency in another realm. And I feel like politics is especially vulnerable to this. Like, oh, I'm an engineer. Oh, I've done a business once before, so like now I also know how to construct entire governments. And it's like, you know that there's like thousands of years on debates and experiments on what the construction of government should be, and the idea that some retarded dipshit fucking crypto bro can stumble onto the space and like, oh, actually, I was like, bro, get the fuck out of here. There is simply no barrier to politics and philosophy as well. I guess that quote about philosophy also applies to politics too, where there's a quote I read about philosophy, something like, you know, like very little or very few people actually do a bunch of research, you know, and read papers and everything and study philosophy, but everybody practices philosophy. You always do when you try to think of like what's right or wrong, or you know, how much do you condemn a person for, you know, some action, or how mad should you be, or how evil or good is something, whatever, right? You're always practicing philosophy, even if you don't know any like formal study about it. And I guess politics is the same. You're always, in a way, when you vote or advocate for things, you're kind of practicing politics, even if you don't know anything about it.
He basically, and a bunch of people around him, have decided that the country is going to be run by oligarchs, that oligarchy is the future, even though we really should call them plutocrats, because oligarch just means rule of the few. But, and if that's the way things are going, better to be an oligarch than not.
Yeah.
And then, so I think that J.D. Vance, it's funny, like, J.D. Vance has been making a name for himself sort of on the far right for years, endorsing industrial policy, saying nice things about Lena Khan and Elizabeth Warren and all these things, saying, you know, 10,000 cheap toasters isn't worth one American job, and other economically illiterate stuff. And yet, when he gave his big speech in Europe about regulation and free markets, he was like a Reaganite free market guy about AI and big tech, but nothing else. And to me, that seems like, okay, he is carrying water for that constituency, but for no other constituency that believes in free markets. It's free markets for us, but not for that other stuff. And I think that's a sort of a sign. And I don't, what can actually come of this, I don't know. I think that the most...
In debate prep, do you do anything to improve memory of important facts that you might need? Not in particular. There might be some debate prep I would do. I mean, usually I'm making outlines and stuff, but the thing is I'm usually debating these topics a ton anyway, so I've already got all the repetition in. If I was debating anything I'd never spoken about on stream before, I'm sure that I would sit down and do some process to commit things to memory or whatever.
Dismaying stuff to me is not the threat necessarily to liberty right now, although there are some things to be worried about. It's just the corruption of it, like the meme coin corruption, the crypto corruption, the special dealings and special pleadings. One of the attractions that people don't seem to really understand why Trump loves tariffs so much is that historically, tariffs are the biggest driver of political corruption, because every single interest goes hat in hand and either asks for an exemption to tariffs or asks that their competition get tariffed. It is a way to beseech those in power for special pleading, and that, I think, is the economic philosophy of this administration.
Yeah, that's a point that's made not often enough. The tariffs are often criticized as just bad economics, but it really is it's a bottleneck that Trump can construct so that he can dole out favors. I mean, it really enables a kind of mob boss style of rule.
Right. And I think the mob boss thing, just to dwell on that for a second, I recently wrote about this at the Dispatch, but like the mob boss thing is real. One of the biggest influences on Trump was this crooked Democratic machine party boss in Brooklyn. And his whole approach to politics was punish you if you're an enemy and reward you if you're a friend. Trump's approach to macroeconomics is exactly that. But also, like, you look at the Ukraine deal where, you know, he's like, no security guarantees, but we need a piece of the action. You know, you need to give us a chunk of your resources just to make us whole. And in fact, he said, we're going to get our money back plus, right? So he wants to make a profit off of Ukraine.
Yeah.
His view of foreign policy you can get very eggheady, and I'm happy to do it if you want, about spheres of influence theory and Carl Schmitt and all of these kinds of things, and a 19th century understanding of great power relations. But really, it's Tony Soprano approach, right? He thinks NATO is a protection racket, and they're not kicking up enough. It explains why he's so nasty to our allies, but so deferential to our adversaries, because the adversaries are in effect heads of the other 5 families, and they deserve respect as equals because he's a boss and they're bosses. But his underbosses, his capo regimes, his button men, England, all Canada, all those guys, they aren't showing enough respect to the Don, as it were. And that colors his entire approach to our relationship with allies and our relationship to adversaries, is that our adversaries deserve respect because they're strong men like him, and our allies are weak and they're living off of his teat and not showing him enough respect.
Yeah, well, let's drill down on that, because I think that's the center of my concern. We're having this conversation about 6 days after that debacle in the Oval Office. Many people have analyzed it. I think there are 2 diametrically opposed views of what happened there. It seems to me more or less axiomatic that if they're high-fiving in the Kremlin and shouting for joy on Russian state television, whatever Trump and Vance thought they were up to, they're on some level they're not serving American interests. I mean, I don't see how anyone looks at the this alignment with Russia when Russia and Putin himself have been explicit enemies of the United States for so long. I mean, Russia has, Putin and his surrogates on Russian television have explicitly threatened us with nuclear annihilation for our support of Ukraine. Right? I mean, this is just these are not our friends. To leave aside everything else they've been doing to try to undermine American democracy. I mean, let's just dig into how is it possible that your friends and erstwhile friends in the Republican Party have lost sight of the fact that, one, Putin is actually a dictator who kills his political opponents or jails and kills them.
So does Hillary.
As well as journalists. He launched an actual war of aggression against Ukraine. Ukraine is a country that we convinced to give up its nukes. I mean, one unfortunate lesson of this whole episode is that no one can look at this and think it was a good idea to give up your nukes, because this is what happens to you. I mean, again, are most Republicans closeted and sane now, or have they actually taken the firmware upgrade of their brains offered by Trump and Vance? And I mean, what do you think Mark Rubio thinks is actually going on here?
Well, you know what Nietzsche said: to look into Mark Rubio's soul, the soul will look back into you. Yeah. Be careful about that. Yeah, you asked this before, and I didn't really answer the question about like how many normie Republicans are left, right? Their numbers are shrinking for sure. I mean, just as a matter of just head counting, the number of Republicans in Congress who were there prior to 2017 has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, right? Because a lot of the normies, it's like I don't want to quote Yates, but like the best lacked all conviction and got the hell out of there, and were replaced by the worst in a lot of cases. And so, there's a reason why my podcast is called The Remnant but I think there are still an enormous number, or a significant number, of Republicans, including Republican voters, right? Ukraine is still, like, I did the numbers recently, like 60, 70% favorable views from Republican voters, while Russia is like 20%. Some of this is a manifestation of being way too online and only listening to your biggest fans, which is a form of corruption. But the problem is that while there are still significant numbers of normies, they lack courage, and they'll say, "Look, I have to pick my battles." I've talked to Republican senators who I think who agree with us very, broadly and actually narrowly on all of these sorts of issues when it comes to Ukraine and a lot of other things. but they're like, look, I'll lose
What
a
do you want me to
primary.
do? It's bad. What do you
There
want me
are
to
only
say?
so many fights I can take. Some of them are legitimately, this gets underreported, but there are Republicans who are elected Republicans who are literally afraid for their personal safety.
Yeah.
With the Pete Hegseth nomination, Joni Ernst was one of the holdouts, and there's a lot of talk about how like what she was put through, the death threats and all of that, were one of the things that tipped her over. There are a lot of decent people who are friends of mine who left in part because they're like, why am I risking my family, like literally my family's lives, for a tenth of what I can make in the private sector, right? I mean, and so some of it is well-founded lack of courage, but nonetheless, it is, if you stick your head up in this environment and actually speak with conviction about some of these things, your political career could end very quickly. The intimidation, you can be vilified, and you can be physically scared for your safety, and that's very scary. And I don't know, I don't know how to judge it because I'm so sometimes I'm too close up to this. I know the personalities well enough that it's hard for me to say, oh, this guy's a terrible person when he's under all these pressures. And at the end of the day, politicians are politicians, and they go, the spirit of there go the people, I must go with them, for I am their leader, has defined the Trump era for a very long time. And I can't tell you how many politicians I know who were totally freaked out when they started going to Republican events in the first term, never mind now. People who had been, representing a district for 10 terms, 20 years, all of a sudden not recognizing anybody in the room because Trump has brought in all sorts of new voters to the party who aren't conservative. You can call them right-wing, but they're much more populist nationalists than they are anything like, the William F. Buckley conservatism I grew up in.
Yeah. So let's talk about this alternate perspective on what happened vis-a-vis Ukraine and what happened in the Oval Office last week. I mean, there's I've heard it in various pieces. I did a podcast actually just before that Oval Office incident with Neil Ferguson, who was surprisingly open-minded about the wisdom and probity of the Trump administration. We had, I pushed back on many of his general points, but many people felt that I let him get away with murder simply because we pitched that episode into the chaos of what happened in the Oval Office, and we had recorded it the day before, but then released it, and it was perceived very much through that lens as this is our response to what had happened here, and it did not age well, even by the hour. But I think Neil would say, and again, just forgive me, Neil, if I'm getting you slightly wrong, but based on what he said last week in our podcast, and I've certainly heard other people say as much since, that what's happening here is that the Trump administration has recognized that the U.S. cannot fight multiple wars now. We can't fight a war with Russia and then also maybe fight a war with China and then also maybe help Israel fight a war with Iran. I mean, we actually have to triage our commitments here. And
wait, is he giving someone else's argument? Or does he believe this? Life is a fight against, I guess, entropy, right? The organization of energy, the organization of being able to do things while also maintaining systems that prevent you from degenerating, right? Whether you're talking about your human body, whether you're talking about nuclear reactions and the four fucking forces of the universe, whatever the fuck, like, there's no point in life where some giant organization can say, we can't keep moving and we can't handle like these things, so we can only do one thing at a time. Nobody succeeds that way. Now, obviously, you can't overburden yourself, but the idea that the United States can't help Ukraine and prepare for what's coming with China at the same time. I'm sorry, we're a massive country. We have so many resources. We have so many talented people. We have a huge government with tons of different arms that are dedicated to different things. That's just an absurd... Oh, he was talking about his guest position? Sure. Okay, yeah. But that's like, it's an absurd proposition. I hear people say that Trump says that, right? Like, oh, we can't do all these things. We can't fight all these wars. Well, yeah, we can. What are you talking about? We're the United States of America. We're not fighting any wars. We can supply Ukraine. That's easy. They're fighting that war. We're sending money to Israel. We're not fighting their war. Like, in terms of overall conflict right now, we're not really involved in that much compared to the beginning of Biden's term or even Trump's term last time. So, I don't know. I think it's just stupid.
The charitable analysis of what's happening with Ukraine is that Trump has recognized that we have to really put our entire focus on this rising risk of a collision with China. And so we have to get out of the business of policing Europe, let Europe take care of Europe. Ukraine is not a crucial American interest, even if you might think we have some moral obligation to support a democracy that has been attacked by a true enemy of democracy. We're just doing triage here, and we're now pivoting to Asia. What's wrong with that analysis?
So this is one of the great frustrations I have in the Trump era. And Neil Ferguson is a friend of mine, so I'm not ascribing this necessarily to him. First of all,
go off. Go off, King.
The goalpost moving you referenced at the very beginning of the conversation among your friends, there's a lot of that in the intellectual classes, in part because a lot of people want to be relevant, to have influence in the administration, to be part of the conversation. And you just see that, again, I'm not ascribing this to Neil, but like it's replete across vast swaths of the world I live in. This idea that somehow you can define reality slightly differently and get as a defense of both a defense of Trump and an inducement to get him to do something, or to make the best of the policy. And I've seen a lot of that about the mineral deal with Ukraine, where people are just sort of wish casting about it. But in the abstract, right? The case that you lay out, that is a on its face, an intellectually defensible argument.
Barely, but not really. Nah.
It is
cringe. It's cringe. You can just call it cringe.
Foreign policy requires governing is to choose, right? And in a world of scarce resources, you put your resources where they are most needed for the problems ahead. And I get all of that. My first problem with it as a defense of what Trump is doing is that it's not a defense of what Trump is doing. It's this, you hear it all the time. Oh, what Trump is doing, he's giving tough love to NATO, for NATO to fix itself. The idea that Trump really wants NATO to become robust and strong is just nonsense, right? It's not his goal. He feels like he sees the world stage in this very zero-sum way. He's a real estate guy, and he thinks if they win, we lose. That he thinks the EU was created. He said it just the other day. The EU was created to screw America.
Right.
It's ahistorical bullshit, and you can go down a long list of these kinds of arguments that are pretextual rationalizations for what Trump is actually doing. Like when he calls Zelensky a dictator, he doesn't actually care. He doesn't, in his own moral universe, he doesn't think dictator is an insult. He just thinks that's the nearest weapon to hand that is usefully insulting against adversaries. When he was asked if Putin was a dictator, like 2 days later, he says, "Oh, I don't like to use that. I don't use that language lightly."
Yeah.
Well, it's just all nonsense, right? And so I think that it is good that Europe is rearming, or apparently is rearming. I think it's good that Germany is doing this. I think Britain has been negligent in all sorts of ways about its national security and all that. But at the end of the day, part of my fundamental problem with this supposedly new realism, and I've long believed that realism is kind of nonsense. It's basically the best working definition of a realist, of a foreign policy realist, is an ideologue who lost an argument. It is it's a rhetorical trick of being able to say, oh, those ideologues are screwing things up, and if you'd listen to me where I actually understand the facts and I have an empirical grasp on reality, everything would be different. But the problem with that is that it is a fact of realism rightly understood that national honor matters, that we have made commitments to allies, that when we betray those allies, when we betray our commitments, when we break our word, that has consequences for us going forward in all sorts of ways. And if you want America to remain, if you want the U.S. dollar to remain the world's reserve currency, pissing off basically all the other rich friends we have is not a way to do that, right? I mean, China doesn't want the dollar to be the reserve currency. Europeans and the Japanese, they go along with it because they're our allies and they're part of the international order we created. When we tell them you can't trust us, that we are going to look for literally maximizing profit over your misfortune, the idea that you're going to get them to cooperate in all these other institutions is just not is fantasy.
Nonsense.
And it's also just it's undermining. I don't want to get too poetic, but it undermines the country in all sorts of sort of almost spiritual ways. When you tell people that the best way to conduct foreign policy
is to fuck over all
is
your
to
allies,
belittle your friends and allies,
and to suck
and
up
make
your
friends
enemies.
with your enemies,
Yep.
and to say
It's
that all
fucking
that
so
stuff about
stupid.
freedom and liberty and
I just wish that like just think for like 2 seconds and apply this to literally any other area of your life ever. Any other. No, this would never fly personally, romantically, business-wise, for coworker. Nothing. This never, ever, ever, ever would work anywhere else in life.
leading the free world, that was all BS, and we don't care about that. What Americans think about their own country starts to change. And I just one small example of this, because I thought it was just so evil. When we bullied Israel into voting with us in the UN, where we voted with North Korea and China and Russia and all of that, Israel has a vested, deep and abiding national interest in maintaining the idea that the world should come to the aid of scrappy little democracies fighting for their survival.
Yeah.
But when you force Israel to vote with us, and basically the pitch was, yeah, you got to put all that stuff aside because in reality you rely on us to keep you around, and so
this might have been a good argument like 40 years ago, but Israel's already lost the support of the rest of the world, so it makes sense why I don't think we're fundamentally altering Israel's approach to how it presents itself to the world. Because, well, I mean, actually, I guess I don't know how most of Europe feels about Israel. Skilleraz, thank you for the host. I don't know why YouTube does this in like white text on a light gray background. Jesus.
The Israelis were left with an impossible choice. Be loyal to an abstract rhetorical principle that is in their interest, or piss off an administration that they desperately need help from right now. And so to bully them into doing that, we didn't even let them abstain, was a perfect example of basically making dishonor a linchpin of our foreign policy.
Yeah, I think this is a crucial point, and it puts the lie to this traditional opposition between realism and idealism, or moralism, or some other variant of it. I mean, because ideals and moral principles have real consequences. So if your realism has to embrace the causal efficacy of having people trust you, having people admire you, having people want to help you because you're the good guy. You really are. It matters if you really are the good guys, and because there really are bad guys out there. And that's the thing I just can't understand in this analysis. I mean, for years, for as long as we've been alive, virtually, the enemies of democracy, and now Putin is exhibit A in that cast of characters, have been trying to advance the.
Let everyone take advantage of you, or you're a bad friend. That's a good point too. Brought up by Papa One Relevant Chatter. I do think one of the big issues that America's had is, like Trump says, I think America has been taken advantage of a lot. That's why we're one of basically the poorest countries on the planet. We basically have no say on how anything in the world works. We don't really have any strong military presence. We can't really dictate policy to any other countries or anything. Definitely America's been taken for a ride for sure. I don't think we've gotten anything out of being the leader of the free world, for the past 30 years. It's a good point. Good point.
Claim that all of our ideals, the wanting to support the liberal democratic order because it's a good thing, it's better than the alternatives, all of that is bullshit, right? There really are no deeper ethical principles that govern the relationships among nations. There's just raw power. There's just bullies and aspiring bullies. And Trump, in a few short weeks, seems to have fully ratified that view of America. And I mean, he's just revealed us to be totally transactional, and extractive in our relationships with our allies, and even extortionate. I mean, Zelensky effectively has a gun to his head, and
isn't this a populist issue that they have to live in two worlds at all times? The one where we are the weakest nation being taken advantage of, while also being the reserve currency of the world and the most powerful military. No, there's always a way. Nobody lives with permanent cognitive dissonance. If they say they are, or if they're presenting two stories and they're lying about one of them. The idea is basically just that the United States is the strongest country in the world, and that's why people are taking advantage of us and leeching off of us so much. We could be even stronger. We could be even the strongester country in the world, the betterest country in the world, if we would just make it so people weren't taking advantage of us so much. Yeah.
As you point out, Trump and Vance waltz in there and start demanding, mineral rights and even a profit on the war, and then hector him for not dressing appropriately and saying thank you, obsequiously enough. It is a complete immolation of our moral stature on the world stage, and yet the Republicans I know who voted for Trump simply don't care. They don't think any of that matters on some level.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, at least they don't care now, right? But look, I mean, this gets to the point we were talking about before about the importance of courage, right? I was listening to an interview with man on the street interview with a Ukrainian I guess it was on NPR the other day, and he was making the point like, look, there are reasons for hope. Donald Trump isn't a king. He was saying he doesn't speak for all of America. We know Americans are on our side, and and we have hope that there will be pressure put on the administration to change course. I think that hope is, alas, going to be somewhat in vain. But if you don't speak up, right? If you don't actually lend actual evidence to that hope that Trump doesn't speak for all of America, if you just go along with it.
This is why I think it's important for individuals to resist and all that, for sure. But this is why I think it's so fucking important that the Democrats have some kind of leader showing support for Ukraine or showing support for Canada, that we need to have that focal point, that speaker or whatever the fuck. I don't know what the DNC, Ken Martin won, right? I don't know what he's been doing or what I'm not trying to shit talk. I'm not sure what they've been doing. But like the Democrats need to be able to present like, hey, rest of the world, like there's a whole other America here that's basically invisible to you right now, but like we're not invisible. Like here we are, But yeah, the Democrats just don't have that leader yet, I guess.
Then it becomes true, right? And so I wish more Republicans would speak up. I wish more conservatives would speak up. I wish they would. They don't have to necessarily have to say, I was wrong about Trump and he's a horrible person, but they just have to say, look, there are good guys and bad guys in this story. And the tests are so small. I mean, it's something it's a very Orwellian sort of Stalinist kind of thing where you force people to lie. That's the key, right? You make them lie, and then you kind of own them. And so
you hate AOC, Bernie, and Gavin, but they have aura. You've combined so many different people here that I've given different opinions on it. I don't think I hate any of those three people, so I don't know why you say that. I think AOC, unless she gets fucked over by Pelosi or Schumer too hard, I think AOC is like on track to be president, okay? Or a very powerful political person at least. Bernie has really good stage presence and messaging. I've always said that. I just don't like the policies and the fixation on class stuff. And Gavin Newsom, I don't know if I've said anything bad about Gavin ever, so I don't even know where you come from.
This chilly take. Fuck.
Forcing people to lie about whether or not they think Russia started the war.
Please turn off Factorio sound. No, fuck you. This is what America's going to sound like. We're bringing back manufacturing and factories. Get used to it, loser.
Is just a way to signal that truth will not save you, right? That you cannot tell the truth. You cannot have the courage of your convictions and speak honestly. And that creates an environment that...
Do you like this good guy, bad guy framing? I mean, this is how Trump has framed himself. What do you mean? This is literally what they do. I mean, what are you going to... I mean, Trump wants this. And yeah, I do think we should have good guy, bad guy framings to some extent in politics. I think that people who are authoritarian or anti-liberal, I think, should be framed as bad guys from a liberal sense. Because they are. And we're framed as bad guys in their world, right? Make no mistake, people like Hassan or people like Trump who are anti-liberal, they don't frame you as just being, another person to contend with. You are the bad guys in their narratives.
That I think makes it easier for people, the ones that are really frustrating you, and I know lots of people just like the ones you're describing, to convince themselves, right? I mean, one of the reasons I ultimately left Fox was that I was basically not allowed to criticize Trump on air. Now, no one told me that. I was just never asked a question where my whole thing is
Okay, I stand corrected then. I just saw a clip of you being really sour on Bernie about billionaires. Okay, so when you saw a clip, we'll ignore that you've apparently decided my entire opinion on based on a clip that you saw. It was probably 20 seconds long. 2, I am sour about the billionaires messaging because I think that it's bad policy. I think Americans don't care about billionaires at this point, so I think it's a loser message, number 1. And number 2, it's bad, like, in effect, to just the fixation on, like, somehow billionaires are the solution. And, like, simultaneously, the cause of all our problems and our salvation is through taxing them or something. I just think that's bullshit. It misses way too much. But I can dislike somebody's messaging, like what the policy position they're messaging about, and admit that, like, Bernie is a good messenger and that he can get people excited, can get crowds riled up. He's got good aura, as they say, right?
don't lie, right? You ask me a question and I'll answer honestly. So if you only ask me questions about what I think of Nancy Pelosi, and you never ask me what I think about Donald Trump, it'll sound like I'm on board. And the way Fox operates, the way the most of the MAGA echo chamber operates, and the Republican Party now operates, is that silence is taken as approval and consent, and you create an environment where breaking that silence gets punished. And
well, the case you just referenced is
money in politics is rated really high for problems facing Americans last month, according to Pew. I disagree. I think that Americans might say that, and some of them might even think they feel that way, but I don't agree that they actually do. When somebody says they don't like money in politics, that's a proxy for there are loud voices that I don't like, right? Because if you would have asked conservatives how they feel about billionaire interests in politics prior to, well, I'll say even prior to this administration, my guess is most of them would say they don't really like it. Trump is an outlier. He doesn't count. Because when you say billionaire, they're thinking Zuckerberg, back when he was, part of evil Facebook. They're thinking Bill Gates. He wants to put microchips in your dick. They're thinking George Soros. He wants to put microchips in your kids' dicks, okay? This is like who they think of when they think of billionaires, And then if you ask the people on the left, I mean, they're class-oriented, or they're thinking like Koch brothers or whatever else. But like, let's say like 10 billionaires came out, and they were like, we've created a joint fund to cure malaria, homelessness, and I don't know, some other fucking pet issue. I seriously doubt people on the left be like, oh my God, we have to stop them. That's not okay. Fuck the billionaires. They shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. Like maybe the very far left ones, maybe the Marxists would be like, donations are just a temporary way to alleviate the issues of the struggling proletariat. But most people wouldn't care. I think the issue is just billionaires just kind of, they become like a catch-all for the problems that you have in society. And because it's not really a coherent group of people to target, there's no real policy position to talk about that would actually do anything to alleviate any of the issues. And it's like, okay.
Is even stranger and in some sense more depressing than that. I mean,
what is the upside of having the ultra rich in politics?
Got a cold? Gotta keep going? Gotta go with Alka-Seltzer Plus Severe Cold and Flu Medicine. It works.
I mean, the answer to that question should be insanely obvious. The upside is that if they agree with your positions, they can fund those positions really well. I mean, look at the upside for conservatives having the ultra-rich in politics. What do you mean?
I agree with you that Trump and authoritarians generally put up a series of loyalty tests, and you fail them at your peril, at least political peril. But in this case, his claim that Ukraine started the war. I don't know if you noticed this, but this is it struck me this way at the time, and then I heard John Podhoretz on the commentary podcast say that this is how it struck him. And so when Trump said that Ukraine started the war, it was almost like he misspoke, and he couldn't, and then he just couldn't take his foot out of his mouth, and he just.
What kind of populist messaging would you be supportive of? I don't like populism. I don't think we should support that messaging. I think populism should be seen as dangerous. I think the support should be in favor of liberal democracy. I think that when the system has no defenders, I think you're in a very scary spot where you leave yourself vulnerable to all sorts of like horrible things being able to happen, which is where we're at right now. right? One of the reasons why Democrats, I think, have so much trouble kind of like mounting an effective response to Trump's campaign is because Trump kind of took up the messaging that both sides were giving, but I don't know if the Democrats realized how much they played into it, where it was like, oh yeah, what's going on with the system today? Well, it's run by lobbyists, it's run by corrupt, the donor class, it's run by the billionaires, it's run by the wealthy and the elite. Even if all the data, might show to the contrary, it doesn't even really strongly support that. They kept saying that. Well, if you're going to say that over and over and over again, and then Trump comes into office and now that's his messaging, well, how are you going to counter message to that? Because you've basically sold that same message, for years as well. How are you going to defend a system that you also said was rigged from the start over and over? Like, you're fucked at that point.
He doubled down on it, and then everyone was forced to insist that the emperor has clothes after that. But it's like he actually was.
This is the worst take I've ever heard Destiny have. Taxing billionaires is the only way to save our economy. Bro, taxing billionaires isn't going to do anything to save your fucking economy. What the fuck? It's such a stupid fixation, bro. Design your tax policy to be effective. Stop imagining or fantasizing delusionally that like 100 or so, whatever billionaires are somehow going to bail out all of your government issues. It's just never going to be the case. You're never going to capture that much wealth with any type of tax. The capital flight is going to be instantaneous if you try to like take away a ton of it. You're going to destroy your market. It's not feasible. It's never going to happen. Widen your tax base. Okay, that means middle class is going to have to start chipping in, okay? And maybe even the working class, all right? Widen your tax base and then up your rates on your top progressive taxes, and then figure out other clever ways to capture money from people earning money in other ways. So like your capital gains rates, long-term capital gains, that should probably be higher. I don't know why it's as low as it is. Up that a little bit, and then find ways to force people to step their bases up in investments so they can't just have unrealized gains fucking forever. Find ways to capture more revenue that way. But it's not just going to be billionaires that can bail you out of all of your economic problems. That's the one thing. It's just stupid.
Wasn't making the claim in any kind of straightforward way that no, history is other than you think it is. Ukraine actually started the war. He was sort of riffing. He was saying, you've been
disagree, Destiny. You can disagree with me if you want, but you're just wrong. This isn't like an opinion. Like, you can look at the amount of wealth that billionaires have and think of ways like you have nothing. It's an emotional position of like, I think the billionaires can bail out the country. They can't. It's just retarded. It's not even like a reasonable minds can disagree. It's just you're incorrect. I don't know what you want me to say.
Started the war. He was sort of riffing. He was saying, you've been fighting for 3 years. You should have put an end to it. You shouldn't have started it. And he sort of blurted out the phrase, you shouldn't have started it, and was anchored to it. And then you watched the ripples through the epistemology of the Republican Party, where people had to figure out how to construe that utterance.
Delete the cap on Social Security, then expand SS to all Americans, and you have the start of a UBI. So deleting the cap on Social Security would be insane. That would be one of the most insane tax increases of all time. You can maybe raise the cap on Social Security, but the issue is you shouldn't be tapping, one issue we already have with Social Security is that people borrow from that fund. You probably shouldn't be using Social Security taxes, though, to fund other things in the government. Like, Social Security should never be used to fund UBI, because once you start putting political demands on the Social Security fund, you're in a world where you can lose the Social Security stuff because of political stuff. Social Security should be its own thing that nobody fucks with, that nobody touches. It's not used for any other purpose. Just Social Security is there. If you want to raise the cap a little bit, maybe to shore up issues with the Social Security fund, maybe. But I don't even know if we need to raise the cap. I'm pretty sure the only issues with liquidity in that fund right now are just the fact that the federal government borrows from it. So if you raise the cap, you can do it, but the federal government might just borrow more from the fund. So it's like, what the fuck is the point?
As anything other than
the marginal tax rate used to be extremely high, and the country underwent massive expansion in the middle 1900s. History is literally against you. No, tax code is against you. You just don't know how taxes work because you probably have never filled out even a 1040 easy in your entire life. That tax code doesn't even exist anymore. The actual tax rates might be high, but the effective tax that people actually pay was not 90%, like some people like to say. Some people like to jerk off that marginal tax rate. If the tax rate is 90%, people aren't earning money on ordinary income. They're shifting their money around through other means, right? You can't make the rates that high and expect that people are just going to pay it, especially in an international market today. You're just going to have people just flee to other markets and earn their money elsewhere. Don't the top 1% own like 30% of America's wealth? Why wouldn't you be able to raise serious money by taxing them more? What does owning wealth have to do with anything? We don't tax wealth in this country, and there's not really a good way to tax wealth. Generally we tax income, or we have use taxes or whatever. Are all the 30-something-year-olds fucked when it comes to Social Security benefits? I hear a lot about it going insolvent in the medium term. No. If Social Security is truly and utterly fucked, then you'll get 78% of what you're promised. But that's like the worst case scenario. The idea that it's insolvent or you're going to not get anything when you're older is stupid.
And delusional.
Yeah. No.
Rewind 20 seconds. See if you agree. Sorry. Hold on.
He was sort of riffing. He was saying, you've been fighting for 3 years. You shouldn't. You should have put an end to it. You shouldn't have started it." And he sort of blurted out the phrase "you shouldn't have started it" and was anchored to it. And then you watched the ripples through the epistemology of the Republican Party, where people had to figure out how to construe that utterance as anything other than delusional.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. John's a good friend of mine. I think he's right about that. You know, I mean, there's a dynamic. There's that old joke about how you never want to be the first person to stop clapping when Stalin enters the room, right? You know,
there was that. It might be apocryphal. I don't know if it was Solzhenitsyn, or I think it's from the Gulag Archipelago. But there's a story of like people clapping to the point of just excruciating pain, like clapping continuously for 20 minutes, and the first person who stops was actually killed. Right? I mean, that's yeah.
And so again, we're not there. But that's the emotional temperament.
We could tax wealth. We could tax unrealized gains. It's hard to respond to all your points in such a small space. I think Gary's Economics. Why do people keep recommending Gary's Economics? What is this? I keep seeing people recommend this guy. Taxing unrealized gains, I think, in the market. I think that there are ways to do that slowly that I think would be effective. Some people disagree. Taxing wealth is stupid, and it's a fool's errand. Doing wealth taxes of any kind, I think, would just be dumb. May seem where the Republicans are pro-Russia, but isn't it the same to when leftists used to be pro-Soviet Union, but instead of communism, it's anti-woke or something? LOL. Okay.
That we're kind of talking about. I mean, I'll give you just small...
I'm vehemently... Fuck, I keep mixing. I don't even know what Sam said. Fuck. I'm vehemently anti-populist too, but why did you then support AOC being the frontrunner of the Democratic Party after the election? Well, because I think she's a good messenger. I think that she's moderated a lot on her policies. I think she seems to be working better with Democrats inside of government. Like... How do you expand the tax base when it's already impossible to tax the handful of billionaires we have? Wouldn't this just highlight even more how money in politics is legitimate? What do you mean? Billionaires pay taxes. If you think they don't pay any taxes, you're just getting fed retarded propaganda. The wealthiest people in this country pay the vast majority or overpay a ton based on the percentage of the population they are. But it's because they make a lot more money as well. But when I say expand the tax base, I just think it's when you expand your tax base, you can capture way more revenue than you ordinarily would be able to. By trying to milk just like a small percentage of people of a fuck ton of money, which creates a lot more distortionary effects that you probably don't want. Why are you so against wealth taxes? I know you say it sucks, but why? It sucks because, one, valuing somebody's wealth is already incredibly difficult to do, right? So if you own a house that hasn't been sold for a long time, is like, how do you value what the actual price of the house is that you're going to pay a tax on? Two, where does your wealth tax start? Like, are we going to start forcing business owners to like liquidate their businesses just to like slowly have their wealth drained every year by the U.S. government? How do you even value a business that's like privately held? I think these things are incredibly difficult to do. The amount of people you have to hire to do it, it's just a bullshit. It's just too much. I think it would just be better to have like step up in basis taxes or like higher like capital gains taxes. It would be much simpler to levy these taxes. I think you'd get more money from it. You wouldn't have to hire so many IRS agents and all this bullshit to count for it. I just think it'd be better to collect money that way.
The phrase "you shouldn't have started it" and was anchored to it, and then you watched the ripples through the epistemology of the Republican Party, where people had to figure out how to construe that utterance as...
There was this graph that Tesla didn't pay taxes in 2022 and 2024. Can you explain how this is a thing? I'm never going to finish this video. Fuck. After this question, I'm finishing this video, and then we'll do this Gary's Economics guy or whatever. If you're not paying taxes as a corporation, then it's probably because you don't have any income to show, right? Or you don't have any profit to show, which is true of everything, right? If you spend more than you make, then you're not going to pay taxes. What would you pay taxes on? The wealthy have received overwhelming tax cuts over the last 30 years. Why is reverting these a bad thing? Why are you actually mentally retarded? Or I don't know how I'm supposed to, like, do I need Crayola crayons to explain? Where have I ever said I'm against reverting tax cuts? I don't know what you're talking about. I've never said anything to the effect of that. So I don't know if you just like heard me say something about billionaires besides a guillotine and you just assume that like I don't know how to answer your question.
Shouldn't have started it, and he sort of blurted out the phrase "you shouldn't have started it" and was anchored to it, and then you watched the ripples through the epistemology of the Republican Party, where people had to figure out how to construe that utterance as anything other than delusional.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. John's a good friend of mine. I think he's right about that. I mean, there's a dynamic. There's that old joke about how you never want to be the first person to stop clapping when Stalin enters the room, right?
There was that. It might be apocryphal. I don't know if it was Solzhenitsyn or I think it's from the Gulag Archipelago. But there's a story of like people clapping to the point of just excruciating pain, like clapping continuously for 20 minutes, and the first person who stops was actually killed. Right? I mean, that's yeah.
And so again, we're not there. But that's the emotional temperament that we're kind of talking about. I mean, I'll give you just very small anecdote about this. You may probably don't even remember, but very early in his first term, he butt tweeted something. Covfefe, right?
Yeah.
And it was like it was obviously just like a stupid typo butt tweet kind of thing. And I made some jokes about it in a column or something. And one of I can't remember if it was the Federalist or National Greatness, but one of those sort of turd polishing, Trump is great in all things, wrote an entire piece condemning me for not understanding that it was possible that what Trump was really doing was tweeting a message to the persecuted people of the Middle East that he was on their side and that they should rise up, because Covfefe is only a couple letters off of some word in Arabic that would, and it's like you guys are going to give yourselves hernias trying to make it was like the Sharpie thing with including Alabama and the hurricane, and everyone, he was right. It's like, you're not doing him favors politically. I mean, forget characterologically, that ship has sailed, but like, if you surround yourself only with people who think every brain fart is brilliant, when you actually do something stupid or wrong, that's very scary, because no one's going to have the courage or the political muscle to say, Mr. President, back off on that. And in an environment where everybody is told that the first test, I mean, like the job interviews for a lot of positions in government, you are asked who won the 2020 election. And if you answer wrong, you don't get the job, or you get fired, or you don't get promotion, or whatever. And if you answer wrong to one of the other questions that's been reported was, who were the real patriots on January 6th?
Right.
He wants a government full of people who either are so lacking in integrity that they're willing to lie about those kinds of basic fundamental things, or so deluded that they actually believe the correct, quote-unquote, correct answers. Either way, it's just no way to actually run a government.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you trim a government. What's your impression of what Elon is doing and the Doge efforts?
I've tried really hard to be case by case about a lot of this stuff.
Wow.
And I have some criticisms for how the media, the Democrats, are treating some of this as making the real story.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Let's see how triggered I can get back chat. Ray the Vagabond says, it is hard, so we can't/shouldn't do it. 1, it isn't that hard. It is done regularly at each divorce where you have to split when wealth is calculated. How unfathomably fucking retarded are you that you would pick one of the most difficult wealth division things in the United States, which is two people fighting? Like, the fact that that would be your go-to example, where people will ruthlessly try to litigate in the courts what wealth is, or how much a thing is worth, or how you should value it, and thinking that having the government on one side of that equation and an individual on the other is somehow an easy thing. What a retarded fucking statement. And then the response of Akel saying, yeah, it's hard is kind of a shitty argument in my view. That's not a shitty argument. Taxes, definitionally, should be as easy to collect as possible and as easy to understand as possible. That's a good tax. When taxes become more complicated to collect or complicated to understand, it makes it so there's an increased possibility of tax avoidance, and it makes it you have to spend more money collecting the taxes. This is why things like income taxes are generally good, sales taxes are generally good, because you have it there. When a person gets paid, they pay a tax. When they buy something, they pay a tax. It's easy to levy, meaning it's not a sophisticated, complicated thing to implement and calculate. There's not a whole bunch of bureaucratic bullshit there. And it's easy to, like, check, like having an auditor look at a tax return and see it or whatever, so you have to pay a bunch of people man hours to go and investigate. And it's easy for people to understand, so they know exactly what they're getting, and there's not a bunch of ways to, like, get around it. So, no, that when I say, like, a tax should be easy, I don't just mean, like, oh, I'm lazy and retarded, it has to be easy. I mean, like, there's good reasons why easy to levy, easy to understand, and then easy to process, like, taxes are a good thing. I'm sure there's some econ book somewhere that says, like, what is a good tax? And it has, like, these are the 3 elements of it, generally, like, a good tax. Strawman one guy. Destiny wrote that comment himself, LOL. Obviously, you want them to be easy to collect, but you also need to balance that with revenue generation, distortionary effects, and probably welfare effects. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock fucking Holmes. Yes, obviously, yes. Sales taxes are considered more negatively than you are presenting because they are regressive. When you talk a good tax in terms of implementation, it's different than good tax in terms of effect. Yeah, I didn't mention every single... Yeah, never mind. It's got to be like the fucking retard hour. I don't know. Never mind. Okay, I'm getting one guy so hard right now. Let me get a drink. Hold on. Holy shit. That was a good one, guy. You got me, okay? Have a video. Destiny should really look into the international efforts around global minimum tax. Tackling the issue of capital flight is one that can be solved with all nations wanting higher tax base. Oh, true. Why would we talk about realistic taxation solutions in the United States that would avoid capital flight when we could just globally harmonize all of our taxes? Why didn't I think of that? We just have to get every single country on the planet to agree on a global minimum tax. Oh my God. You're so... Fuck, why didn't I think of that, bro? Holy shit. Wait, why don't we just make it illegal for capital flight? We can just say it's against the law and then no one will do it. We can say it's illegal. You can't do it. We're gonna make crime illegal again. Yes. Can you explain why these companies are all in Ireland? Yeah, because Ireland makes a fuck ton of money by having bullshit-ass tax rates so that it's a super professional environment for a bunch of businesses to go and set up taxes there. Although I thought that we were trying to do something about it like 10 years ago. But I don't know where the efforts on that are.
Oh, come on, dude, I'm behind you.
Oh, look who decided to show up.
Sorry, guys. Where's the fridge?
What is this, a bachelorette party?
Okay. Please tell me there are 12 beers inside that box.
Hand over your man card.
You gay, Collins.
Come on, hand it over.
Hand what over, Liam? I don't know what you're talking about. Give him the card, Chet. What are you guys? Hey, what are you doing? What the? I don't grab a fucking game card. No.
Think I like doing this? Think I like taking my best friend's man card like this?
Oh! Game card! Fucking man card! We don't have to do this. Talk to him. Please. No. Chet. Whatever, Liam. I don't know what you're talking about. Give him the card, Chet.
Liam's just such a complex character to breathe life into. I mean, he's the heartbeat. He's the de facto leader of this group.
The opening of the sketch is always tricky. I mean, you only have a few seconds to establish group dynamics and hierarchies. Liam did such an amazing job with this, especially when he nut taps Billy as they're entering that final lap on Rainbow Road.
When the time came, I wanted to tap his nuts in a way that said, hey, I'm top dog around here. I'm Queen Pig, and nobody eats from the trough until I'm done, capiche?
We're only 3 seconds into the scene, and we're already asking ourselves about the character's sexuality. And then wham, Chet enters.
My character Chet, well, he's late. He's late to the party, and his only bargaining chip is a 12-pack of beer. Well, in this case, seltzer.
Sorry, guys. Where's the fridge?
He lets his so-called friends push him around, these tossers. But why? What do they even know about him? Who is Chet? I mean, who is he really?
Chet's a suppressed homosexual. We established that very early on in the writer's room.
No, Chet's not gay. So he bought his mate some seltzers. How does that make him gay?
We knew we wanted to make a sketch about toxic masculinity, and we knew we wanted Liam to be a vessel for that message. But what could he say that hasn't already been said? And then one day in the writer's room, someone blurted out,
Hand me your man card.
Those 5 words hung in the air for what felt like an eternity, suffocating the room.
Hand over your man card.
So when Liam blurts out this crazy man card demand, he doesn't even know what he's really saying. But then it's too late, because now Billy's in on the joke.
You're gay, Collins.
Esa línea ni estaba en el guión. Yo debería de haber dicho, ya dime, hombre, pero eso no se me sentía bien. Al fin de cuentas, mi personaje es una homófoba.
Chet in the air trapped in his lungs represents the marginalized LGBTQ community, while Liam symbolizes the systemic intolerance, which is evident in the weapon that he's using, the wire, which is obviously a metaphor for the Republican Party.
Billy se quiere meter a ayudar, pero no sabe cómo. Aunque él también quiere ver la credencial de hombre de Chet, también quiere que los dos dejen de luchar juntos porque le recuerda a gay porn.
Will Angus
Gay
is our
porn.
most valuable asset. And of course, there's no Will Angus without Jack Martin.
Este sketch no hubiera sido posible sin Jack Martin.
Jack is kind, he is professional.
I've been playing Will for 2 years now, and it's just as rewarding as it was on day 1.
10 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible, but thanks to technology, we were able to generate the most cringe-inducing character the world's ever seen.
The way he walks, the way he talks, the way he breathes, his posture, his laugh, his beady little
Ah.
eyes. It's meant to make you sit back and go, whoa.
And
The
there's a
fuck?
wave of relief, knowing that there's someone, something out there that's more pathetic than you, that gives you a license to laugh.
Playing Will takes a toll, mentally and physically. Sometimes I forget exactly where Jack ends and Will begins. And you spend so much time pretending to be a loser, you start to believe you actually are one.
That's the nature, the beauty of sketch comedy. Every joke is a square in this much larger comedy quilt that we're weaving. And like the conquistadors before us, we hand this quilt out to the public as a gesture of goodwill, as if to say, we come in peace. Now laugh with us.
Lost book. Library's collection has expanded.
This is a stupid question. Why do businesses pay tax on profits, but I personally pay tax on revenue? You pay tax on your income, and then you spend it on generally like consumer goods and services, but you don't like spend it on a business. You just consume things. If you were a self-employed person, or if you were a contractor, then you wouldn't actually pay taxes on all of your revenue. You would have expenses as well. So when you're a sole proprietor, you get to write off part of your like whatever business expenses you incur as being a sole proprietor if you do contract work for people. And then you also have like your standard deduction and everything too. So people get like deductions for being alive and everything as well. Is the meme that Amazon avoided paying taxes by intentionally operating with a loss for 10 years true? Probably, but that's because corporations just try to grow. User acquisition and revenue growth are more important than profit, so they just keep reinvesting and keep growing. Arguably, you would say that's what the tax system is supposed to incentivize, but obviously people get mad when people do that. But let's see. The site I linked, Tesla's annual financial report released this morning, shows the company enjoyed $2.3 billion of U.S. income in 2024, on which it reports precisely zero current federal income tax. Okay, but for what? Why? Do they have expenses, or what do they do? How much was just profit? Elon Musk company avoided all federal income tax and nearly $11 billion of U.S. income over 3 years. The most valuable American website. Elon Musk company. Million comes to a 3-year federal tax rate. They're using accelerated depreciation. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, they're depreciating their stuff, I guess, on an accelerated schedule. I mean, these are all just like parts of the tax code. When you invest into factories or when you invest in like things to produce things, you're allowed to depreciate those over time as an expense, or I guess you can take some of the depreciation up front. It sounds like that's what they're doing. I mean, this is available to every business owner in the United States. Like, what do you... How would you approach stopping mass propaganda campaigns by people like Elon? Okay, these are the questions I'd say. You have to, we have to radically rethink our, probably our legal environment around how online shit like that works, but... What is this? Hold on. Trump was reading from a literal Tesla sales pitch, complete with pricing, during his White House event with Elon Musk. Is this true? Is this a real picture? Tesla pricing. Full self-driving, Model X, the CT, Model S, Model Y. Teslas can be purchased as low as $299 a month or $35K. Destiny, behind on stream, hoping that disproportionately powerful people take your side on an issue seems pretty undemocratic, no? That doesn't feel like a very satisfying answer to whether there are any upsides or abilities. I mean, people are always going to have disproportionate power in society. If you wiped away all the wealth, then it would be social capital. If you wiped away all of that, it might be, I guess, who the CEO is of the company with the most influence, or the person with the largest or wealthiest family, or a person who's a monarch, or a person who's I mean, you can't equalize all power through all of society at all points in time, and I don't even know if you'd really want to do that, or if that would even be preferable. Like, wait, whoever linked this YouTube video is not available anymore. Is that supposed to be my Gary's economic video? case it was my link. Okay. No, that's not Gary Economics. It's not. That's not. Wasn't your link. Okay, I'll go look for one.
Welcome to Gary's.
What video am I supposed to watch? Who's getting rich from your mortgage?
Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to explain mortgages. Okay, I wanted to do a video on mortgages, and the reason being is I talk a lot in this video about wealth inequality increasing. That means wealth is being transferred away from primarily ordinary people, middle classes, towards the very rich. And there's a variety of ways in which we see that happening. So it's being okay, I wanted to do a video on mortgages. And the reason being is I talk a lot in this video about wealth inequality increasing. That means wealth is being transferred away from primarily ordinary people, middle classes, towards the very rich. And there's a variety of ways in which we see that happening. So number one is lower rates of home ownership, and we're really seeing that especially for younger people. Number two is
this supposed to be about the US or the UK? Because I can't speak to the UK housing market at all. I don't know anything about that.
Is the lack of ability of people to accumulate financial assets like stocks and shares. So we primarily see that through pensions. Older generations were much more able to accumulate financial assets in pensions, and now they're not. Number three is the loss of government wealth, which means government privatizations and increased government debt. But those first three, well, the first one is very visible. The second one, less pensions and less government wealth, we often don't see them. What we often do see, and one of the most visible ways in which ordinary families are becoming poorer versus the very rich, is increased sizes of mortgages. And I wanted to speak a little bit about that because I think a lot of people don't see the way in which increased sizes of mortgages is a transfer of wealth from the middle class towards the super rich. I think they kind of think house prices are going up, mortgages are bigger, that's just the way it is. And in this video, I'm going to explain how increased mortgage debt is a manifestation of increased wealth inequality. So the first thing I need to explain, in order to explain this, is something that I have spoken about before on the channel. We've got two videos, one called Debt and one called What is Money. If you want to understand these concepts better, you can go and watch them afterwards. The basic concept which you need to understand is total mortgage debt is always zero. This is the first thing you need to understand. Total mortgage debt is always zero. If you look at the amount of debt across the whole society, mortgage debt, it is always zero. And that might seem crazy. You know, so many people have mortgages, how could it possibly add up to zero? That is because every debt has a creditor. For everyone who is in debt, there is somebody who is in credit. Your money is always owed to somebody.